Giving children access to the internet was a mistake. I've talked about before how I believe children should not have access to the internet, but this officially seals it. This from Not the Bee. A TikTok challenge has kids setting their school issued laptops on fire. And they have the image here that I'm going to guess is from a TikTok, and then some meme overlays, including Ferris Bueller's friend from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Alan Ruck's character. Yes, I somehow recognized the face, despite mostly knowing him from when he's older, i.e., Succession and the movie Freaky. Anyway, let's read it, and then we'll discuss it. I'm going to talk about how this makes me really question the whole technology in schools initiative, which I should know about because my high school graduating class, which literally consisted of the last millennials and the oldest Zoomers, were the very first to have this kind of thing brought into the education system. So, before I talk about all that, be sure to give this video a like, comment what technology was like in your school, and whether you agree with me that this proves that giving children access to the internet was a mistake. Oh, and subscribe for daily videos. Warnings are sounding around the country about a dangerous new TikTok trend that shows students how to set their school-issued Chromebooks on fire. From Cover Rhode Island Police. Parents beware. A dangerous TikTok trend called the Chromebook Challenge is circulating among students, and it's something every parent should know about. This challenge encourages kids to take apart or intentionally damage their school-issued Chromebooks, sometimes by trying to short-circuit internal parts. What may seem like a fun experiment online can quickly turn into something much more serious. Risk of electrical shock or fire, permanent damage to expensive school equipment, disciplinary actions at school, and even legal consequences. Oh my god, there are legal consequences for vandalizing school property that you're just entrusted with? Who knew? As parents, we know how easily kids can be influenced by what they see online. That's why it's so important to talk to your child about online trends and peer pressure. Check in on what they're watching and sharing on TikTok and other apps. Remind them that school devices are tools for learning, not toys for social media stunts. Let's keep our kids safe, informed, and on the right path. You could also just, I don't know, not let them use the internet, period. Clearly, this whole trend is proof that was a mistake. Like, collectively, it was one big mistake to grant children any form of access to the internet. I actually watched a good video last week about the disappearance of dedicated spaces for children on the internet, like Webkins and other forms of websites that had things like pre-written responses and other activities that were designed specifically for children, but apparently the money wasn't there. I think I'll pull it up and show you bits and pieces of it after we do the Babylon, not the Bee article, because again, this is not the Bee because unfortunately, this is all real. I wish this was just the Babylon Bee because then it would all be satire and I could have a good laugh about it. I found videos showing how it's done, but I'm not going to post them here. Good, because I wasn't going to show them here anyway. Several schools in Connecticut had to be evacuated because kids started fires with their Chromebooks. On Thursday, I was alerted by both my director of security and high school principal that we had a Chromebook that was smoking, said Dr. Maureen Brummett, superintendent of Newington Public Schools, said. We were able to do an investigation with student interviews and other methods that we use, and it became clear that the damage was done intentionally, that it wasn't a malfunctioning Chromebook, but rather a student who had intentionally done things to it that caused it to smoke and eventually melt, she continued. Not only is the potential for fire an issue, but the fumes from the smoking batteries are toxic to inhale, and there's the potential for explosions. But of course, all the warnings haven't stopped kids from joining in on the latest dumb, dangerous thing. And then they show some tweets like, a kid in our cross country team got kicked off because using his Chromebook, he lit a desk on fire to get out of state testing. No, I'm not joking. This is a thing that happened. They had to evacuate the school. Giving children access to the internet was a mistake. Why? This is pretty much the end result of giving every child a device to use for school related stuff. What I really want to know now is have they officially replaced textbooks with it? Because back in my day, and yes, I'm old enough to be able to say that because high school for me was 10 years ago. Back in my day, we still had to use physical textbooks, though granted, it was all a matter of granted, it was brand new thing that we were doing with the first we had netbooks in freshman year, and then the rest of the time it was iPads, and that's where I got my very first keyboard for it. So I had an iPad keyboard, like a hardware one, before it was cool. Before Apple started pushing them as quote unquote MacBook replacements that can only run an OS that is incredibly incapable or underpowered for the powerful chips they're putting in there. But I digress. Some people in my class are trying to catch the Chromebook on fire. Bro, this health. Bro, someone in class today set a Chromebook on fire. I hate this school. I hate this setup. Take all these Chromebooks away from children. Make them learn the old fashioned way. Parents, do not let them use the internet until they are 18. Or if you do, strictly supervised only when you're in the room with them, so that you can shut down anything like this. How TF do the kids trying to set their Chromebook on fire in class have a higher GPA than me? They're children. They are impressionable. Their brains have not developed properly. This is why giving them unfettered access to the internet, to TikTok, was a mistake. Now, some of you might argue this is just an amplified version of dumb things that the Gen Xers and the Boomers did when they were that age. Uh, no, I'm pretty sure outright vandalism of school property, destruction of school property, actually, not to mention. Could this be classified as a form of arson? No, I want to hear in the comments down below. Would you consider this an act of arson? I mean, they are intentionally setting something on fire. But you be the judge. As you can imagine, some of the kids are doing this intentionally to get out of final exams. So, maybe it's time for President Trump to enforce that TikTok ban. And then the gif of Steve Harvey being like, I'm just saying. And that's the end of the article. Yeah, this honestly just proves children should not have access to something like TikTok. I think if an adult wants to go on TikTok and waste their free time scrolling away on it, I have no problem with it as long as they don't start following these kinds of trends or challenges. I have yet to hear about adults actually engaging with these kinds of things, like doing these kinds of challenges. I'm sure some do, we just don't hear about it as much. Let me know in the comments if you've ever done a TikTok challenge. Now, I'm all for fun challenges. Like 11 years ago, ALS Ice Bucket Challenge was a big thing. I was never nominated, thankfully, because I wouldn't have done it and I wouldn't have donated the money in lieu of doing the ice bucket thing because personally, I think I have nothing against doing a good thing for ALS, like fighting ALS. But at a certain point, I don't want to. Back then, I didn't want to do it just because everyone else was doing it. I was like, no, fuck that. To be clear, my attitude was about the ice bucket challenge. I hated getting wet. I still, let's just say I haven't been in a pool since middle school. I haven't gone swimming since middle school. Part of it, I think, was being made to swim laps against my will on Saturdays when I was in 5th grade, which, again, I do not hold it against my dad for having me do some kind of exercise instead of just sitting around playing video games or staring at screens. But I never liked it, and as soon as I had the freedom to just not do that ever, even in a more leisurely setting, I personally wanted nothing to do with swimming or even getting wet, mostly because I'm big on electronics. Like late middle school, throughout high school, I carried my 3DS wherever I went because of the built-in pedometer, so I could play my games when I wanted to, and because of Street Pass. So maybe I'm being a little hypocritical here because I personally had the 3DS. You couldn't do anything with it that would have these kinds of trends. So, to be clear, I'm not against kids having electronics. I'm against them having access to the internet. Unfettered access where they can just access the same stuff that adults can access. There should be a dedicated kids section for the internet. Here, this is the video that I watched. Why are there no online spaces for kids anymore? Unfortunately, she didn't put in any timestamps, so let's just go to after the sponsor and
Here to stay up to date with news, get back into things. Neopets
let's watch some of what she has to say about this and then discuss.
was arguably one of the earliest virtual worlds for kids, but it didn't start out that way. Created in 1999 by Adam Powell and Donna Williams, their original target audience was uni students. However, the site skyrocketed in popularity and they soon realized that the Neopets user base was largely comprised of children. And it makes sense, the bright, colourful critters, games and competitions, and the ability to socialize with other little internet nerds from across the globe was hugely appealing to children. But Neopets was just the beginning. In the year 2000, Habbo Hotel was released, and while targeted more towards teenagers and young adults, it set the stage for what was to come. In 2003, Disney's Toontown Online was released, and 2005 saw the release of the absolutely iconic Club Penguin, as well as the slightly less iconic but still beloved Webkinz. This era and
I was a big Webkinz user back in the day. 4th and 5th grade, I would buy one of them whenever I could and then register them on the website. Fun times, but definitely a waste of money, if I do say so myself. But hey, at least there was a dedicated space online. I remember Webkinz particularly because they had things like pre-selected responses for chats and such. Anyway, let's get back to this video.
my opinion, really marked the birth of the kids' virtual world. Neopets and Habbo Hotel were used by kids, yes, but they weren't necessarily designed with them in mind. Toontown, Club Penguin, and Webkinz, on the other hand, were specifically designed for kids, with fun, colourful graphics, dress-up and customization features, games and prizes, and fun, silly writing. They also placed a lot of importance on internet safety, with reminders to keep your passwords safe and report bullies, as well as implementing safe chat features. Safe chat soon became a staple of kids' virtual worlds and could range from free typing with curse words automatically censored to pre-written lists of chat options.
That right there is exactly the only thing that chat option that should be allowed for children because they do not have the judgment capability to censor themselves. A lot of adults lack this too, but we all collectively agreed that adults are allowed to make their own choices. All right, let's skip to the shutdown of these.
The president of Sony Online Entertainment writing in a Reddit AMA after the shutdown, quote, "No more kids games. Kids don't spend well and it's very difficult to run a kids game. Turns out kids do mean stuff to each other a lot." Many other virtual worlds shut down throughout the 2010s, including BarbieGirl.com, Panfu, Mushy Monsters, Millsberry.com, Fantage, Pirate 101, and most notably Club Penguin, whose death truly felt like the end of an era. Virtual worlds were no longer the hot new thing and they just weren't making enough money to justify the cost of keeping them up. But what exactly caused these games to go from cash cows to money sinks? Why did parents and their kids stop spending? Well, I don't want to be that guy, but the answer is capitalism. You ever notice how like 90% of the internet is just ads now? Every website is filled to the brim with
It's probably the shareholders of these companies holding the people behind it to the fiduciary responsibility, which again, they are legally obligated to do that for the sake of making the most amount of money possible so that the shareholders make the most amount of money possible instead of thinking about things like ethics or the wishes of, say, in the case of Disney, the Disney company, Walt Disney's wishes that the parks not have alcohol, yet they do that now because fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. Modern Disney's rationale is like, we need to make as much money as possible for our shareholders. Screw you, Walt! We're gonna start selling liquor at the parks, and nothing you can do can stop us. Not even your descendants. Sorry, I had to do the Mickey Mouse impression, but you get the idea. Alright, let's continue with the downfall of these virtual worlds.
Banner ads. Influencers and celebrities are constantly shilling some hot new product, and overconsumption is made to look glamorous and sexy and cool. We all have the attention span of a goldfish now and demand instant gratification, so ads have to be pumped into every website and every second of content. We need to constantly.
Yeah, kids these days are more about the Subway Surfers or other things, which I'm not against apps that are. I'm not against mobile games as long as they don't have microtransactions. But honestly, from what I've observed, I think it was a mistake to give children unfettered access to the internet. So they should either bring back virtual worlds like this, like, maybe make it the whole point of the company to do that and not be traded on the stock market. You know, maybe someone out there could make a subsidiary that shareholders won't care as much about as long as everything else is bringing in money. And they can leave that alone. I don't know. I'm not in business. But I do know that at a certain point, we have to start actually thinking about the well being of people, children or adults. In this case, children, again, they should not have access to TikTok. I don't think anyone under the age of 18 should have access to TikTok. I don't care if that gets me hate in the comments down below. This whole Chromebook fire phenomenon really proves that it was a mistake to let children have access to the internet. Although, I am willing to compromise if things like Webkins and all these other virtual worlds that Izzy's went on about. I'm all for it if we bring back something like that. But of course, it's going to have to be something privately owned so that no shareholders can be like, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make as much money as possible for me. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. I've made my point. I showed you the Not the Bee article because, unfortunately, this whole Chromebook thing was real. I showed you Izzy's video, which made the point that there is a way to give children space on the internet to be children and not have PDF files be able to sneak in, or if they do, to be more easily caught. And of course, yes, parents should take a more active role, like the Cumberland, Rhode Island Police Department said to do. Yes, it was Cumberland. Cumberland PD and Fire both said the parents need to actually do something. Actually be parents, pay attention to their children. so that they don't become a menace to society or get themselves into really big trouble. So, yeah, that's going to do it for the video. Comment down below what you think about all this. Do you also think it was a mistake to give children access to the internet? Or you think it was a mistake to get rid of dedicated spaces and just integrate them into the likes of TikTok and Instagram where these challenges originate? I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. So, give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos. I'll see you soon.